Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 101 Great Goals for another Talking Points. And this week, the talking points that we're going to share with you are with Ben Kelly from Redmen TV. Ben, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, maybe it could have been in better circumstances considering the season that Liverpool are having. I say this to Ross all the time as well. But thank you very much for coming on. How are you feeling?
I'm all right. I'm ready for the season to end, if that's what you're asking me. Can't wait. I mean, obviously we've got an exciting week coming up with some of the games that we've got. But other than that, yeah, it's gone from bad to worse for Liverpool this season. I can't wait to just get it all done so that I can just enjoy the Euros for a bit instead.
So just before we move on then, if you do want to check out Redmen TV or Ben, all their links will be in the description. He did a fantastic documentary on the Atletico Madrid game last season. So if you want to check that out, all those links will be in the description. Coming up on today's show, we have got the Manchester United protest and also Liverpool's protest against their owner as well. Ronaldo and Juventus, because they are in a bit of bother towards the end of the season. And we've also got Mikel Arteta and what the future holds for Arsenal. And where is Phil Foden's ceiling? Obviously, I've got my Man City shirt on today because we are in the Champions League final. I thought, why not get it out and celebrate? Anyway, so we'll start straight away. So the Manchester United protests. We covered some of the Manchester United protests at Old Trafford. A few days later, when they were due to play Liverpool, they protested again, but they took it a step further and the fans actually got onto the pitch and the game was called off. Seems to have worked, though, for Manchester United fans because they've lost sponsorship deals and the owners have come out and apologised and said that they will be doing better. It's not gone down well with all of the fans, though. Nicole says, we don't want to communicate with them. The bridge has been burned. # get out Glazers. Ben, we'll link it into Liverpool as well just afterwards. But obviously, you were due to play them when the protests happened. What was the Liverpool viewpoint? Were you actually quite in arms with Manchester United fans? Did you actually see why they did it, or were you disappointed?
I think there's a few ways of looking at this from a Liverpool perspective. Overall, yes, I do stand with Man United fans with what they're trying to achieve. I don't necessarily think that barging your way onto the football pitch as they did might have been the best way of doing it. But I think they've gotten to such a point where that's the only way that they're going to make themselves heard. I think they've tried everything else. So they're at a point where, the desperation of, trying to make their feelings known to the owners has reached that stage where they have to do something drastic like that. But, obviously, what I did find quite funny was that they played Roma in the week before, but they didn't protest against Roma. They waited for Liverpool Man United. And, in some respects, I can understand that because they are obviously Liverpool Man United is the biggest game in the country. So to get that game postponed was quite an achievement because, that messes up many, many schedules. It messes up, Sky's schedule. It messes, it affects so many people within the sport. And that was the only way that clearly, they felt that they could make their voices heard. So I do stand with them overall. And we spoke to Stretford Paddock last week on our channel about what it was all about. And, Liverpool are going about this very differently with the way that they're approaching that, the way that they're chatting to the owners. We're trying to do this in a more sort of amicable way. And trying to reconnect with them. But Man United fans, they're well past that with the Glazers, as you've touched on there, George. The way that Man United, the way that the Glazers just haven't communicated with the fans for a long time now. It must be so frustrating as fans of a football club when, clearly they're an afterthought. Clearly, with the Glazers' investments in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers across the pond in the NFL, that's clearly a much more important and prioritised project for them. And that must be really frustrating for anybody associated with Manchester United.
I think the whole European Super League idea it's resonated with a lot of fans. It's also been a little bit of a wake-up call for many a fan as well. We spoke with Ross, who as well is on Redmen TV, and we're speaking about it from a Manchester City and a Liverpool point of view. Of course, I don't think you could get two more fan bases who hate United as much as Man City and Liverpool, but to see United and City and Liverpool fans and more fans as well just coming together, it just shows that how much it really hurt football, didn't it? But in regards to United, like you say, it's been going on for probably 16, 18 years. And to see owners come into your club that were just there for the money, do you think it's a little bit too much too late to come out and apologise and now say that, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, on the back of trying to take them into the European Super League, which seemed like just the final straw.
Absolutely. It's well documented just how little communication Manchester United fans get directly from Joel Glazer. I think the last time, prior to this statement and this apology, the last time that he spoke to them directly was when Tony Blair was still Prime Minister of this country, which is a ridiculously long time, obviously. So, for me, the United fans will be sick of that. What I will say, though, is, it's like anything, you do have to be careful what you wish for, because right now, the Glazers, in a way, they spend money on players and stuff, and maybe that's a little bit narrow-minded of me to look at it like that. But the question is who's going to buy the club? Man United, it's been released today by Forbes that on their list of most valuable sports teams, Man United are the 11th most valuable sports team in the world. They're worth just over £4 billion. So the question really is who really can afford to buy Manchester United and also not be another version of the Glazers or worse. And I think that's what you've got to look at the moment. Sometimes it is better the devil you know. And I think that, I think Liverpool fans appreciate that and understand that. And that's why I think that at the moment there's still a little bit of a way back for FSG. We're very much putting the olive branch out in terms of our main supporters union, Spirit of Shankly. We've been having meetings with FSG. We've been trying to build a sort of a new relationship with them in terms of having fans on the board, in terms of sort of communicating what we think we need to what say we need to have as fans. And we've got a follow-up meeting this week where they're going to discuss the proposals that Spirit of Shankly made last week. But as I said before, I completely empathise and sympathise with Man United, because I know that they're past that point. They're long past the point of trying to reach out to Joel Glazer and have that conversation with him, be in the room with him and have that conversation. And that's, that just sort of says really where Liverpool and Man United fans are differently in terms of their relationship with the owners of their club.
Yeah, I think each club has had a different relationship with their owner in terms of how they've reacted to this whole thing. I think once Chelsea and Man City were brought out of the European Super League, I think they were very much disappointed. Like, I'm still disappointed now that it happened, but it's the first strike of a path that the owners have taken us on, and it's sort of, you can forgive it and hope it doesn't happen again, anything of that sort of nature. Whereas Liverpool, it's gone on a little bit more, and Manchester United, like we say, are far, far past the line. But then I also get the Glazers' point of view, and this is not me sticking up for the Glazers, but why would they sell? They make so much money out of that football club, and like you say, it's worth £4 billion. It's probably only going to go up because they've got such a core fan base and such an international fan base. So why would they sell? But going to Liverpool then. Did you think it was actually the catalyst that was needed? Because Liverpool fans reacted so passionately, such a working class club. We talk about Shankly and the Spirit of Shankly and everything that happened in the fallout of that. They wanted to get rid of the statue because it just didn't represent him as a person anymore. And that was really nice to see on the outside footballing world. But you said that there's still an olive branch there, and there's still progress that can be made with FSG. So do you think, in a way, in a few years down the line, it could be seen as a good thing for Liverpool?
Hopefully, if they stick to what we've got to make sure is that their offer and their communication now isn't just a token gesture. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it needs to be seen through. It needs to be stuck to. I think that, I mean, to be fair to Chelsea, they've already done it. They've already put fans on the board. And if they stick to that and they let them have a proper say, then that's good for them. That's good for Chelsea leading the way in that respect. But for Liverpool, what we need to focus on is, I think Liverpool fans do recognise that, it's very difficult to find a buyer in this market for the club, and it's very difficult to really, again, it's the better the devil you know. You've got, there's still a way back, and I think that there's lots of good things in FSG's tenure, that you can look back on, and I think because that's the key thing with the Glazers as well. Man United fans talk about just the lack of investment in the club in general. Carrington, in terms of their training facility, it isn't up to standard. When you look at what Manchester City have done, for all Manchester City's, the questions asked of Manchester City and obviously what good they've done for the game, I suppose. But like for the area of Manchester and what they've done for the club, It's second to none what Manchester City have done in terms of that investment. I mean, look at the training complex, look at the academy complex, just everything at the moment is second to none. Man United were always seen as the best in class in every department. And since the Glazers ownership has come in, that standard has slipped dramatically. Even Liverpool, we've just moved to a multi-million-pound new training complex in Kirby that accommodates the academy, and all the players at all levels of the club are playing together, and they're all in the same environment. And there's a clear progression for kids in the academy to see where the first team are playing, and it's all like very much built in unison. There's been obviously the main stand development for Liverpool over the last 10 years. There's been trophies won. They brought in Jurgen Klopp. They signed Alisson. They signed Van Dijk, like all these top players. And over the course of the 10 years, they've done a lot of good things, but that's caveated by a lot of mistakes made by FSG.
Anyway, let's move on. Because there's a high possibility now, after Juventus's loss against AC Milan, that they will not get Champions League next season. And that will mean Cristiano Ronaldo potentially and Juventus in the Europa League. That's crazy to even think of, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Liverpool in a way are facing a similar situation. So I'm very much looking forward to a Liverpool versus Juventus final in the 2022 Europa League. But yeah, it is mad. And obviously, they have the Champions League early exit as well, so it's not been a good season. Obviously this time last year, when Conte left, people were talking about what exactly was going to happen next at Juventus, where they were going to go from there. Obviously there were links with Guardiola at the time, which have since been quashed because he signed a new contract. So it's a very, very strange time, I'm sure, to be a Juventus fan after having such a stronghold in Serie A for such a long time. And you've got the two Milan clubs who, personally, I've got such a soft spot for both Milan clubs. I think growing up as a Liverpool fan, particularly for AC Milan, we had both Champions League finals against them. I think a lot of people forget that we also played them in 2007 and lost. And the sides that we came up against were just so good. And as a result, even all this time later, Milan, are kind of a shadow of the club that they once were. Obviously, the San Siro is such an aging stadium. The club have had financial problems. They've been run down. The quality in the squad isn't anywhere near what it used to be. But I've got a bit of a soft spot for them. So the fact that they might be back in the Champions League next season is, quite an exciting thing. And obviously for Inter Milan as well to go and win the Scudetto. You saw the celebrations outside the Duomo last week. That looked amazing. The way that all the fans congregated in that square, it clearly means a lot to that city. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in Italian football right now, and it's a good league to be watching. But for Juventus, obviously, they're kind of the losers in that scenario. And if they do finish in the Europa League places ahead of next season, that would be a massive shock.
Well, there's no wonder that Juventus wanted it in the European Super League now, and they didn't want any competition because
to it.
Exactly, and they've had the league for 9 seasons. I get fully what you say in the fact that it's nice to see that in the Serie A. It's nice to see these teams coming back and competition again in that division. It's really good to see. But where does this leave Ronaldo then? Because he's got such a huge team around him. He'll have a branding agency. He'll have a marketing agency. He must employ so many people. Do you think they'll let him stay at Juventus if they're in the Europa League? When he's in probably the last few years at the top of his career, can he afford to play Europa League football?
Probably not. I mean, obviously, I think overall it's clear that that for both parties, the Juventus move hasn't quite worked for Ronaldo in the sense of he was very much the Hail Mary to trying to win a Champions League. They'd come so close on a couple of occasions. They've lost 2 finals in the last 6 years. They had the showdown against Real Madrid a couple of seasons ago where they came back at the Bernabeu and then gave away that late penalty. And I think Ronaldo obviously scores that penalty. He certainly scores that overhead kick in the first leg. And they were just getting so close. And I think that they knew that they had a little bit of an aging squad, or a squad that certainly wasn't going to be in its prime for the longest, and they thought that maybe the addition of Ronaldo would just be that extra extra difference that they were going to need. And it didn't work. They lost to Ajax, didn't they, in the 18-19 season? Last season, off the top of my head, I can't quite remember. I think they went out. I don't remember them playing in the knockout tournament at restart. So I think they must have gone out in the round of 16. But people will correct me if I'm wrong. And then obviously this season it was the Porto game that they went out. So as I say, it's not quite worked. And I think from Ronaldo's perspective, I mean, if you ask many United fans, he's still on loan, out from Man United. So even them, I'm sure they'll be clamoring for a return. And maybe that is the way he goes. Obviously he looks after himself, doesn't he? And he'll be still in a physical condition, I think, well enough to play Premier League football. You might end up seeing some kind of like Gareth Bale-esque return, to somebody, if he does come back to the Premier League. I think United will be the destination for him. And they might see it as a similar approach. They'll be like, right, okay, in the summer, they'll be looking at the gap to Man City. We don't know how many points that's going to be yet, but they'll be looking at that and going, right, who can we bring in to just bridge that gap or close that gap to Man City? Because Man City, don't get me wrong, over the next 4 or 5 seasons, they're going to be incredibly strong. They're only going to get better. And they're probably going to go on and win at least 4 out of the 5 next Premier League titles, if you ask me, I think. So for teams like Man United and Liverpool and Chelsea are probably going to be the closest competitors, depending on what Liverpool do in this next window. But Chelsea are going to probably be the closest competitors. But for all of those teams, they're going to be asking, how can we bridge that gap? And maybe for Man United, their answers to that will be, we need to bring somebody in who's going to win us on his own another 6 to 9 points a season, and then we'll see where we are. And Ronaldo might just be that player for them.
And especially outside of a performance perspective, if we're talking about the Glazers, they might just be running the numbers and thinking Ronaldo guarantees you so many shirt sales. Let's just get him in anyway, and it's the dream come true and a brilliant return, regardless of what happens on the pitch. So let us know in the comments below what you think of Ronaldo and Juventus. Next up, Phil Foden's ceiling. It's been noted by a lot of people now. I think more and more people. Ben, yourself, you've said it. Phil Foden. Unbelievable talent, 20 years of age. He's in his first Champions League final. He played really well against PSG. He's played really well against Dortmund. And how far can he go in his career? Bambi says, Phil Foden to be one of the greatest footballers in the world if this form continues, untouchable. It feels so strange to have a player from our academy come out and do so well. I don't think we've had a big talent like this. Well, for what it feels as a Manchester City fan, since Sean Wright-Phillips and Daniel Sturridge, who came through the academy as well, he was fantastic. But Phil Foden, he looks like he's on another level. I mean, what's it like from outside of a Manchester City fan base to watch Phil Foden?
You know what, mate? It's funny that this topic's come up. Don't mind admitting now, but I am so guilty of having my pants pulled down with Phil Foden because I was so convinced that he was no good at all. And I tell you why. I was convinced that when he signed his contract and when he obviously started coming into the team, I was convinced that he was basically just there for PR. I was so convinced that he was there because he was the young lad from Salford in the team, and that's what Manchester City needed. They needed the local lad in the team that they could kind of push. And obviously, he wasn't getting much game time. And I know he was obviously very, very young, but that was kind of my theory on him. But Guardiola, I mean, obviously he's got bags of talent, hasn't he? He's probably one of the most talented. He probably is the most talented young player out there at the moment. I'm not quite sure that there are any better than him. But having that guidance under Pep Guardiola as well, obviously one of the best coaches in the world, or the second best coach in the world, he's come on obviously over the last 18 months, and particularly this season, even in 2021 for me, just since the turn of this year. There's been tremendous strides made in his progress, and at the moment, you're looking at him in the team, and he belongs in Manchester City's best team. And that's crazy for a 21-year-old, to think that, is he 21 or is he 20?
20.
20. So that's insane. He belongs in Manchester City, one of the best teams in Europe. They're probably going to win the European Cup in a couple of weeks' time. And he belongs in their best team. He's got to be the first name on the team sheet for Gareth Southgate this summer at the Euros. He's got to be. You've got to build your team around Phil Foden. And Mason Mount, like, arguably, he's probably not quite as good, but he's getting there with the form that he's shown for Chelsea. But those two players at the moment are threatening to be England's two most important players at the Euros and the 2022 World Cup, just because of the creative and how much that they can, when you've got somebody like Harry Kane playing ahead of them, think of the chances that they can be creating for those players. Think of the goals that they can be picking up themselves for England. But just to bring it back to Manchester City, the level that he's playing at the moment, to go up against PSG last week and the level of experience that they've got, those players, they lost their heads in both of those games, and it was strange, really. I didn't expect that from them. But those players, the level that they've played at over the last couple of years, they've won trophies, haven't they? They've gone deep into European Cups. They've obviously made the final last year, but they've won countless French trophies and countless French leagues between them. And he showed up, and at 20 years old, he did not look one bit out of place against that side in a Champions League semi-final. That is ridiculous. And people talk about Haaland and Mbappe and about these two great players who will go on over the next 10 years possibly, and that will be the rivalry. That will be the new Ronaldo and Messi. And obviously Phil Foden isn't quite talked about in that same bracket. And the only reason he's not talked about in that same bracket is because he's not a forward, and he's not a striker who's going to score all these goals this season. But in terms of talent, right now, I'm telling you, he is going to be one of the best players over the next 10 years. He is a lot closer to Haaland and Mbappe in terms of talent and in terms of ability than anybody gives him credit for. And it's unfortunate that he plays for Manchester City, because on top of all the money that you spend and on top of all the top quality players that you have, the last thing that everybody else in the Premier League needed was just one of their academy products to be as good as this. But at the same time, you can't help but admire it. You sit there and you watch him play in those big games against PSG, and even in the game, even in the games you went away to Aston Villa the other week, and some of the skill that he's got on show is quite frankly absolutely ridiculous. So when I look back at Phil Foden and what I thought of him over the last few years, I thought at one point he was going to be loaned out, and I thought that maybe that's what he needed. But obviously when David Silva left Manchester City, the way he stepped up to the plate since has been absolutely second to none. I think it's blowing everybody away. And I think even I'd like to get your opinion on this, in the sense of, even as a Manchester City fan and football fans across the Premier League, he has surpassed everybody's expectations at this point. And in terms of a ceiling, there is no ceiling for him at the moment. He will win Ballon d'Ors, he will win European Cups, even if it isn't this season. The sky really is the limit for Phil Foden on a club level, on a European level, and on an international level as well. He will be, over the next 10 years, he should be, and I think he will be, the focal point for England and the player that England should build their team around. Absolutely.
Just before I give you my point, Gareth Southgate's never going to play him. We just know it now. So let's just get it out there. He's playing a pivot of Jordan Henderson, Eric Dyer, and Declan Rice, and that's the way it's going to be. But yeah, in regards to Phil Foden, I mean, you're not the only one. Like you say, you're not the only one who ever thought that he wasn't going to be good. There's plenty of big Manchester City content creators who actually didn't think that he was any good, and they actually thought the exact same thing as you as well. I questioned whether he'd be as good as he is. I mean, his technical ability on the ball is just scary. And he's got that knack, hasn't he, of being in the right place at the right time to get the tap in and to score the goals. And it's scarily good. Scarily good. And the fact that he's called Phil and he's from Stockport is just mad. It is absolutely mad.
And the fact he's got that haircut as well. What's he doing?
Well, stooge haircut. Yeah, I can't believe how good he is. And when Guardiola said Phil Foden is the best player he's ever coached in 2019, even I said, Guardiola, get off it, mate. You've coached Messi. But I'm not saying it's true, but you can see why the hype was there, and he's just been absolutely fantastic. And I think it makes the fan base proud, really proud, to have a player who's rep the same streets as you, and who loves the club the same way as you, and is doing that for Manchester City. Even if he was just on the bench, it'd feel proud. But the fact that he could go on and do all of that stuff and be from the same streets as us is just, it makes my mind boggle. And I think I finally get now why Manchester United loved that class of '92 so much, why Liverpool love their Liverpoolian legends so much, because they've walked the same streets. They're the same people as you. And it's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling that they could be that good. So Phil Foden, where do you think his ceiling is? As Ben said, does he even have a ceiling? Let us know in the comments below. And finally then, just quickly, Arsenal and Mikel Arteta, they're out of the Europa League. They scraped through against West Brom at the weekend after looking like they could have gone on and had about 6 goals. They won 2-1 in the end. What's the future for Arsenal, do you think, in terms of Arteta and possibly the owners as well, with a new owner potentially coming in? Do you think Arteta is the man to lead them in the next few years?
I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't know whether for the next few years, but I certainly wouldn't sack him now. What you've got to consider, I think, for Arsenal and for Mikel Arteta is how difficult the last 18 months has been. He comes in, doesn't he, just before Christmas 2019, or just after Christmas, turn of the year. And basically ever since, he's been managing in a pandemic. He's been struggling with injuries. He's been struggling with the squad just not being what it is. I said this the other week, and I don't mind saying it on record. It's an absolute embarrassment that Arsenal thought that they were good enough for that Europa League, for that European Super League. Look at the squad that they're putting out. As soon as you take away Lacazette and Aubameyang, and even Aubameyang's not been great this season, but as soon as you take away those two players, who are they playing? They've got Smith Rowe. They've got some good, talented players, but their most prolific goal scorer at the moment is playing for Newcastle and Joe Willock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's and they had the audacity to think that they were good enough to join a European Super League and compete in that. Like, what is that about? So for me, Arteta, he's. I know that there's been criticisms of his style, and I know that they haven't been great to watch. I mean, it was mad last week because I sat and watched the Arsenal second leg with Villarreal. And obviously, coinciding with that was Man United's away leg with Roma, and that game started 6-2, and I watched the 0-0, and somehow the Man United game was still a better game to watch. Like I don't understand how that happens, and that's how boring Arsenal are at the moment. However, I do think that Mikel Arteta, you need to give him more time. You need to give him a couple of windows to try and get his players in. Arsenal, don't get me wrong, right now Arsenal are miles off the top four. Absolutely mad. They're nowhere near it, and they won't be anywhere near it next season right now, if you ask me, even with a few additions next season. But you need to give him time, because if you sack him now, who's out there? You know what I mean? I've seen Max Allegri linked. Is he the answer? I've got no idea. And again, he's another more defensive coach, isn't he? So he's not going to come in overnight and make Arsenal amazing to watch. So for me, I'd give Arteta some time. I'd give him the window. I'd give him at least another season. And I think the example that maybe Arsenal have to follow is Man United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I mean, Liverpool. Liverpool sacked Jose Mourinho after a loss at Anfield, and this time, about 18 months ago now, just before the lockdown, Man United came to Anfield. They got beat 2-0. Liverpool were going on to win the league, and there was a massive argument on Sky between Roy Keane and Jamie Carragher, and Roy Keane was sat there going, no, give him more time. Man United haven't lost away from home since that game in the Premier League. And Man United at the moment sits 7th in the league. Okay, they didn't really come close to winning the league title, but they've certainly made a better job of it than I think that everybody expected that they would have done. I think they're relying on a few fantastic individuals, but there's been some instances this season where I think Ole has proven that he's a half decent manager, and obviously he's brought in Bruno, who's changed everything for him. But I think I think the same applies to Arsenal. I think they're one or two really good players away from maybe not necessarily competing for the league or even being nailed on for the top four, but they just need to make sure that they're in that conversation next season. I think if the recruitment's right in the summer, then they've got every chance of doing that. But right now, Arsenal are so drab to watch, and I don't necessarily think that's necessarily just down to Arteta. I think it's down to the squad as well.
No, I think you're bang on. I think with the squad that Arsenal have got at the moment, I struggle to think of many managers that have come in and challenged for the top four with the squad that Arteta has got. At this moment in time, what Arsenal player gets into Liverpool's first team?
No. I mean, maybe Saka. If he get in the squad, just trying to think. I mean, at the moment, any of the centre backs, we definitely have Gabriel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how bad it is at Liverpool. But yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you're right though. Not many.
So I fully understand that Arsenal fans are frustrated, but I don't think that I get that they're playing bad and it's tough to watch, but it's a transition that teams will go through. I think it's the same when Jurgen Klopp first came into Liverpool, albeit Arsenal are in a much worse position. But it's exactly the same as when Jurgen Klopp came in, and Jurgen was given he progressed every season, and he was given the time and some would say finances as well to build a job and to do a job. But I just think I can't see any other manager that could come into Arsenal and do a better job that Arteta's done that hasn't already got a job in football anyway. So I think you're absolutely spot on with Arteta. Let us know in the comments below what you think about Arteta and where Arsenal's future lies. But that is where we will have to wrap up Talking Points. I hope you've enjoyed this week's show. I'd like to thank Ben for coming on as well. And like I say, all those links will be in the description. I'm going to do a live stream with Ben when if City win the Champions League. No, I'm joking.
Are we? You have to pay me a lot of money.
Honestly, it would be some brilliant entertainment. I want you, Goldbridge, Ross, just all on. But I'm not getting Louis on if Chelsea win the Champions League. I'm not doing that.
Getting exactly you want.
That's exactly that. So, thank you everyone who's watched. I hope you have enjoyed it. Like I say, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Check out all the links below with Ben and Redmen. Check us out on social media as well. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.